Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt something was off, but you couldn't quite put your finger on it? Or maybe you faced a painful betrayal that shook your trust and left you questioning everything. In today's video, we dive into the emotional journey of Alberto, a man in his twilight years, who experiences love, heartbreak, and the painful discovery of betrayal. But his story isn't just about one man's heartbreak. It's a deep dive into the complexities of relationships with significant age gaps, the emotional struggles of both partners, and the impact of unmet needs and desires. Why should you stick around until the end? Because Alberto's story is not only about love and loss, it's a reflection of challenges we all face in relationships, no matter our age. You'll hear a story that might feel familiar, whether you've been betrayed yourself, or you've wondered about the true meaning of love, trust, and authenticity in relationships. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. From the very beginning of their relationship, Alberto couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. It wasn't anything overt, but the subtle signs piled up in his mind over time, creating a sense of unease he couldn't quite dismiss. He knew Juliana cared for him, he did not doubt that, but there were moments, small moments, when he felt as though there was a part of her that he couldn't reach. There was something elusive about her, something she wasn't sharing with him, and though he tried to tell himself that it was just his insecurity, deep inside, he couldn't escape the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. At first, it was the little things. Juliana, though affectionate, would shy away from certain kinds of intimacy, always offering excuses that seemed reasonable enough at the time. If he suggested they try something new, like exploring different ways to bring excitement into their relationship, she would smile shyly and decline, as if it were something that simply didn't appeal to her. But it wasn't just the rejection, it was the way she said it, with that apologetic smile, as if she felt bad for not wanting the same things he did. She would always tell him, "You understand, don't you? It's just not something I'm comfortable with." Alberto, being the patient, understanding person he was, respected her wishes, not wanting to make her feel pressured. He truly believed that respect for her boundaries was what mattered most. But still, deep down, there was a small voice inside him that whispered that there was something more, something Juliana wasn't telling him. Over time, that voice grew louder, gnawing at him, even though he tried to push it down. He didn't want to jump to conclusions. He didn't want to make her feel like she was doing something wrong, especially when she seemed to be so kind and caring in every other way. But there were moments when he caught her looking at him with a distant expression, as though she wasn't seeing him. There was an emotional distance that seemed to grow over time, like a quiet wall being built between them, brick by brick. Alberto wasn't the type of person to pressure anyone into opening up, but something inside him told him that this wall wasn't just about boundaries. It was something more, something deeper, something she wasn't sharing with him. In her silence, Juliana was battling her internal conflict. Although she loved Alberto and appreciated the life they had built together, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, that a part of her was unfulfilled. It wasn't that she didn't care for him, because she did, she genuinely did. But there was a void in her heart, an emptiness that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't fill. With Alberto, she felt like she was walking on eggshells, trying to be the person he wanted her to be, trying to make their relationship work, but deep inside, she couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that she was suppressing parts of herself that were screaming to be heard. In the quiet corners of her mind, she began to seek something else, something that would allow her to feel truly alive, truly herself. It was Lucas, a young man, full of life and passion, someone who seemed to represent everything that Alberto wasn't. At 29, Lucas was vibrant, spontaneous, and wild in a way that stirred something in Juliana that had lain dormant for too long. Their affair started innocently enough, a brief fling that she convinced herself would be nothing more than an escape, a way to fill the emptiness without risking anything in her life with Alberto. But as time passed, what had started as a fleeting adventure began to evolve into something far deeper, far more dangerous. Something she couldn't seem to walk away from, no matter how much she tried to justify it. When she was with Lucas, Juliana felt a freedom she had never known. With him, she didn't have to explain herself, didn't have to apologize for wanting things that Alberto couldn't, or wouldn't, give her. There was an intensity in their connection that was unlike anything she had experienced with Alberto, an all-consuming desire that made her feel like she was truly living. It wasn't just the physical pleasure, it was the emotional and psychological release that came with being with Lucas. She could explore parts of herself that she had kept hidden for so long, parts of her desires that she hadn't dared to acknowledge. Something was intoxicating about the way Lucas made her feel, free, bold, and unashamed of her needs. One of the things that drew her to him, and perhaps the most revealing, was her deep desire for experiences that Alberto had never been able to provide. Lucas introduced her to new levels of intimacy, including an exploration of her sexuality that went beyond the conventional. She discovered an immense longing for experiences that were more daring, more adventurous, and yes, more explicit. The desire for anal sex, something she had never considered with Alberto, became an overwhelming part of her attraction to Lucas. It wasn't just about the physical act itself, it was about the freedom, the rawness, the complete surrender that she felt in those moments. With Lucas, she didn't have to hold back. With him, she was allowed to be fully herself. But as she fell deeper into the secret, Juliana began to question herself. Was she living authentically? Was this the real her, or was she simply acting out a fantasy, trying to fill the void that Alberto couldn't? The more she found herself immersed in this new world with Lucas, the more she felt disconnected from her life with Alberto. She loved him, but she couldn't ignore the growing divide between them, the increasing realization that they wanted different things, that they were on separate journeys. Juliana wasn't sure if she was living the life she wanted, or if she was simply going through the motions, playing a role to please everyone else. Meanwhile, Alberto, though unaware of the full extent of Juliana's emotional and physical distance, couldn't shake the growing sense that something was wrong. The changes in her behavior were subtle at first, small things that he didn't want to acknowledge. She started to emotionally withdraw, avoiding the deep, intimate conversations that had once come so naturally between them. She would make excuses to avoid spending time together, always with the same tired explanations. Alberto tried not to take it personally. He told himself that it was just a phase, that maybe she was stressed, or that she was dealing with something on her own. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, the doubt in his mind began to gnaw at him, slowly but relentlessly. He wondered if the age difference between them was the issue. He had always known it existed, but it had never seemed to matter before. Now, however, it felt like it was creating an invisible barrier between them, one that he couldn't cross. Was it that simple? Was it just about age? Or was there something more, something deeper, that he wasn't seeing? He wanted to talk to Juliana, to ask her what was going on, but every time he tried, she seemed to pull further away. The distance between them became more and more pronounced until it felt as if there was an unspoken chasm separating them. Alberto couldn't help but feel as though he was losing her, even though he didn't know how or why. The more he tried to understand, the more elusive the truth seemed. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. In the meantime, Juliana's connection with Lucas grew stronger. The more she was drawn into his world, the more she felt disconnected from Alberto, and the more she questioned the life she had been living. What was real? What was authentic? And what would happen if she allowed herself to fully embrace the person she had become with Lucas? The secrecy, the lies, it all began to feel suffocating, but it was also the only thing that kept her from facing the truth she wasn't ready to confront. In the end, both of them were left suspended in a state of uncertainty. Alberto, unsure of what was happening to their relationship, tried desperately to hold on to what they once had. Juliana, torn between the life she had built and the life she was beginning to discover, found herself at a crossroads. Both were trapped in their worlds, unable to fully communicate, unable to fully understand one another. And in their silence, the love that had once brought them so close began to slowly crumble. Juliana's emotions were a storm every time she was with Lucas. The forbidden passion that ignited between them consumed her completely, leaving her breathless and yearning for more. Every intimate moment they shared seemed to deepen her feelings for him, pulling her further into a world of exhilaration and freedom she had never known. Lucas was the embodiment of everything she had craved but thought she could never have: youthful energy, unrestrained confidence, and an eagerness to fulfill her desires without fear or hesitation. Each encounter with him was intoxicating, a blend of raw intensity and liberation that made her feel alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. Yet, whenever she returned to Alberto, the man who had stood by her side for so long, a crushing sense of guilt would settle heavily in her heart. She couldn't ignore the truth. Alberto didn't deserve the betrayal. He was kind and devoted, and had given her a life of stability and care. But the pull of her affair with Lucas was too strong, like a drug she couldn't quit. Deep inside, she wrestled with the weight of her choices, knowing she was tearing apart the very foundation of her relationship with Alberto. The situation reached its breaking point one evening when Alberto, unaware of her secret life, nervously brought up the idea of trying something new in their intimacy: anal sex. His request, though earnest, left Juliana feeling trapped and conflicted. To her, it felt almost absurd coming from a man of his age, a stark contrast to the youthful and uninhibited Lucas. She dismissed the suggestion outright, claiming discomfort. But her refusal ran deeper than mere preference. The act, for her, symbolized the wildness and vitality she shared with Lucas, something that felt utterly incongruous with the stability and routine she associated with Alberto. The contrast only deepened her internal divide, amplifying the guilt she couldn't shake. Alberto, however, was no fool. The small, peculiar changes in Juliana's behavior didn't escape his notice. The furtive glances at her phone, the excuses that seemed thinner with each repetition, and the odd times she claimed to be busy, each one planted seeds of doubt in his mind. At first, he dismissed his suspicions, convincing himself that he was overthinking and that Juliana was simply a private person. But his intuition gnawed at him, refusing to let him rest. His love for her battled against his growing fears, but he knew he couldn't ignore the truth much longer. One night, as Juliana lay asleep beside him, Alberto found himself at a crossroads. His heart pounded in his chest, torn between the guilt of invading her privacy and the desperate need to uncover what lay hidden. With trembling hands, he reached for her phone, knowing that whatever he found could shatter the life they had built together. Each moment felt like an eternity as he wrestled with his conscience, but deep down, he already knew that the answers he sought might break his heart forever. When Alberto finally unlocked his phone, he didn't expect the storm of emotions that would hit him. The screen glowed before him, revealing text messages that would shatter his reality. He saw the explicit exchanges between Juliana and Lucas, messages filled with passion, love, and promises of affection. Every word was a sharp slap to his face, a cruel confirmation of what he had feared but never truly believed could happen. His heart lurched in his chest as he read through the messages. It wasn't just the words, they were a brutal reminder of everything he had given Juliana, everything he had trusted her with. To Alberto, it felt like his heart had been ripped from his chest, crushed under the weight of a betrayal so deep he could scarcely breathe. His mind raced as he tried to process what he was seeing. How could she? How could Juliana, the woman he had loved and built a life with, betray him in such a painful, humiliating way? He had always believed in her, trusted her more than anyone else, and now here he was, staring at evidence that shattered the foundation of his world. It was as if the entire universe had conspired to reveal his deepest fear in the most painful manner possible. The pain was unbearable, suffocating, like a heavy weight pressing down on his chest, making it impossible to take a full breath. Every time he tried to read the messages again, the words seemed to blur, and his eyes would fill with hot, angry tears. The realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. He had been living a lie. The love he had shared with Juliana, the life they had built together, had all been a facade, a dream he had been blind to. And now, in front of him, were the cold, hard facts of her betrayal. She hadn't just made a mistake, she had made a choice. She had chosen Lucas, chosen the excitement, the passion, the thrill of something new, over everything they had built together. Alberto felt utterly destroyed, his whole sense of self-worth crashing down around him. How could he have been so blind? How had he not seen the signs? The questions swirled in his mind, each one more painful than the last, and yet the answer seemed elusive, like a cruel joke. The next morning, with a heart weighed down by grief and anger, Alberto decided he couldn't stay silent any longer. He had to confront her, to face this painful truth head-on, even if it destroyed him. With trembling hands, he gathered the strength to show Juliana the damning evidence. The messages, the explicit words that confirmed his deepest suspicions. As he confronted her, every word felt like a punch in the gut. He demanded an explanation, but Juliana, caught in the act, tried to deny it at first. She stammered, her face flushing with guilt, but Alberto could see right through her. The evidence was undeniable, and with nowhere to hide, she crumbled. The tears flowed freely as she confessed, her words a mixture of regret and truth. She admitted that she had loved the security and the affection that Alberto had offered her, but she couldn't resist the intense passion she had felt for Lucas. Hearing those words, hearing her admit to the depth of her betrayal, was like a knife twisting deeper into Alberto's already broken heart. He stayed silent for a long time, the weight of her confession hanging in the air between them. He didn't know what to say. Anger bubbled up within him, but it was quickly swallowed by a crushing wave of sadness. Humiliation washed over him, leaving him feeling exposed and vulnerable, as if every ounce of dignity had been stripped away. The pain was overwhelming, suffocating. How could she do this to him? To them? How had he been so blind, so willing to believe in something that was never truly there? The relationship he had cherished for years now lay in ruins, and he couldn't help but wonder how he could have been so naive. The days that followed were a blur of pain and confusion. Alberto didn't know how to move forward. He withdrew into himself, isolating himself from everyone, from everything. He sunk into a deep, painful depression, questioning every decision he had ever made, and every moment he had spent with Juliana. He felt lost, as though he were floating in a sea of regret, unable to find his way to shore. How had he let this happen? How had he allowed himself to become so emotionally invested, so vulnerable, in a woman who didn't share his values, his commitment? His mind was consumed with endless what-ifs, and every time he closed his eyes, the images of Juliana and Lucas haunted him. Weeks passed, and Alberto began to realize that he couldn't let this experience define him. It was painful, yes, but it wasn't the end. He had faced hardship before, losses, failures, disappointments, and he had come through stronger each time. This was no different. It was a wound, yes, but it was also an opportunity to heal, to grow, to rediscover himself outside of the relationship he had thought would last forever. Slowly, the fog of despair began to lift, not because the pain was gone, but because he had started to see the glimmer of a future that wasn't tied to Juliana. It was in an unexpected place that he found the first light of hope. Alberto had joined a support group for elderly people, mostly for distraction and perhaps a chance to talk about the hurt he had been feeling. But what he found there was far more than he had anticipated. Surrounded by people who had lived through decades of pain, loss, and hardship, he found a source of strength he hadn't known existed. The stories they shared about overcoming life's darkest moments, grief, rejection, loneliness, spoke to him in a way nothing else could. Their resilience, their determination to keep moving forward despite the odds, gave him the courage to look at his situation with fresh eyes. Perhaps this pain, as terrible as it was was not the end of his story. Maybe it was the beginning of something new. It was in this group that he met Clara, a 68-year-old woman who had lost her husband years ago and had spent much of her life finding peace within herself. She spoke of love, loss, and the importance of healing, but also new beginnings. Clara became a quiet source of comfort and strength for Alberto. Their conversations, at first casual and simple, slowly grew deeper. They shared stories of their pasts, their struggles, and their hopes, and as the weeks passed, a bond began to form between them. What started as friendship soon blossomed into something more. Clara's warmth, her wisdom, and her gentle kindness gave Alberto something he hadn't realized he needed: hope. Hope that love could still exist in his life, but not in the way it had before. It didn't need to be perfect. It didn't need to erase the past. It just needed to be real. Meanwhile, Juliana was facing her harsh reality. Lucas, the man who had briefly been the object of her passion, had never wanted anything serious. He was only interested in fleeting moments of excitement, and when things became difficult, he walked away without a second glance. Juliana, left with nothing but regret and the remnants of a broken affair, found herself alone, haunted by the choices she had made. She tried to reach out to Alberto, hoping for forgiveness, hoping for some sense of closure, but it was too late. The Alberto she had once known was no longer the same. He had moved on, he had healed, grown stronger, and was beginning to see the beauty of life beyond the pain. In the end, Alberto realized that healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning from it, accepting it, and allowing it to shape him into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. His heart, once shattered, was slowly mending. It would never be the same, but that was okay. He had found something more valuable in the process: peace, hope, and the knowledge that no matter what life threw at him, he could survive it. He had come out the other side, not unscathed, but reborn. And with Clara by his side, he knew that the future, though uncertain, was filled with endless possibilities. Their story, in its most intimate and heartbreaking essence, became not just a lesson for them, but a lesson for everyone who encountered their tale. For Alberto, the wisdom gained from his experiences was not born from any one grand epiphany, but rather it was cultivated over years of trials, errors, and hard-earned truths. As time passed, Alberto learned to appreciate relationships that were rooted in respect, mutual understanding, and, most importantly, truth. He had, for much of his life, approached relationships with a sense of romantic idealism, believing that love alone could bridge any gap, overcome any difference. But he discovered, too late perhaps, that the foundation of a lasting connection needs more than passion. It needs honesty, openness, and a deep respect for each other's individuality. On the other hand, Juliana's lessons came from the raw and painful realization of the cost of her impulsive decisions. At first, her heart had been captured by the thrill of something new and exciting, the sense of validation she found in the attention of a man who, despite his age, still carried himself with a certain grace. But as time wore on, she began to recognize the fragility of her choices, the emotional scars left by her inability to consider the long-term consequences of her actions. Her impulsivity, born out of youthful energy and a desire to experience life to the fullest, had, in many ways, led her to a place of deep emotional emptiness, where she could no longer deny the distance between what she wanted and what she truly needed. As Alberto approached the end of his life, reflecting on his past, he felt an overwhelming desire to leave something behind. Something that could help others, something that could prevent them from making the same mistakes. And so, he wrote a book, a collection of his experiences, of the lessons learned through pain, loss, and growth. He titled it Beginnings That Time Does Not Erase, a title that encapsulated the essence of his message, that it's never too late to start over, to redefine your life, to find meaning even after the darkest chapters. The book became a beacon of hope for many older readers, who found comfort and inspiration in Alberto's journey. They saw in his words the possibility of redemption, the idea that even in the face of life's greatest disappointments, there is always a chance to rebuild, to begin again. And in a way, The book became more than just Alberto's story. It became a mirror reflecting the struggles and dreams of anyone who had ever experienced loss or heartache, showing them that there is still beauty to be found in the act of starting anew. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Alberto's story serves as a powerful reminder of the emotional and practical challenges that older men often face in relationships, particularly when those relationships involve significant age gaps. Age, of course, brings with it a wealth of experience and wisdom. But it also forces one to confront the physical limitations that come with aging, the changes in energy, desire, and even the way we perceive ourselves. For older men, relationships with much younger women can be particularly challenging. While they may possess a lifetime of experience, they are often still driven by deep emotional needs that are sometimes difficult to articulate or even to understand. In Alberto's case, his desire for Juliana was not just about companionship. It was about filling a void, about finding something in her youth and energy that he felt had been lost in himself. But in his pursuit of this, he made the mistake of overlooking the deeper, often more subtle aspects of compatibility. While passion may ignite quickly, it is the compatibility of values, life experiences, and emotional needs that sustain a relationship over time. Alberto, in his longing for connection, ignored these vital elements, thinking that the bond they shared was enough to overcome their differences. In doing so, he made a fundamental error, believing that love alone could fill the gaps that were created by differences in life stage, emotional maturity, and long-term goals. This is a common struggle for elderly men who find themselves in relationships with younger women. There is often a subconscious pressure to prove that they still possess vitality, that they still can attract and be desired. They seek validation through the attention of younger women, perhaps as a way to stave off the reality of aging. There's a sense of fear, a fear of being left behind by time itself. In a society that so often values youth and beauty, older men can find themselves caught in the illusion that these external attributes will somehow stave off the inevitable changes in their own lives. This search for external validation, however, is often a form of denial, denying the natural passage of time and, ultimately, denying the emotional complexity that aging brings with it. In his efforts to maintain the spark of youth, Alberto often pushed for experiences and practices that didn't necessarily align with his reality, or with Juliana's needs. Whether he desired to try things he felt he had missed out on in his younger years, or his insistence on maintaining a level of excitement and adventure that matched Juliana's energy, he found himself slowly creating an emotional divide. What began as a connection fueled by passion soon became a chasm filled with unmet expectations, confusion, and frustration. As time passed, the relationship became less about shared experiences and more about trying to reconcile two very different emotional landscapes. One of the most painful realizations that Alberto had in his later years was the need to distinguish between genuine love and emotional convenience. Juliana, though she had admired him for the stability and security he provided, had not fallen in love with him for who he truly was. Rather, her feelings were more about what he represented to her, a sense of security, yes, but also a connection to the aspects of her youth and vitality that she feared she might lose. The love she felt for him was not deep or unconditional. It was, in many ways, a love born of circumstance, of emotional need, and of a longing for something that had nothing to do with the true essence of who Alberto was as a person. This highlights a crucial aspect of relationships that cannot be overlooked, the importance of emotional alignment. While it is easy to be swept away by the excitement of a new connection, true love requires something much deeper: shared values, mutual respect, and reciprocity. A relationship cannot survive on surface-level attractions or temporary emotional convenience. It must be rooted in a deep understanding of one another, and a recognition of each other's strengths, weaknesses, desires, and limitations. Alberto's story is ultimately a lesson on the delicate balance between love, age, and emotional fulfillment. It shows that while passion and excitement may bring two people together, it is the deeper, often harder work of emotional connection, honesty, and self-awareness that will determine whether a relationship can endure. Relationships, especially those that cross generational lines, require patience, understanding, and a willingness to face the uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our partners. And while the passage of time may bring challenges, it also brings wisdom. A wisdom that, when embraced, has the power to transform our relationships and our lives. The pain Alberto felt when he first discovered the betrayal was a searing emotional wound, one that took him by complete surprise and left him reeling. It wasn't just the sting of having his trust shattered, it was the deep sense of loss and confusion that washed over him. Betrayal has a way of shaking the very foundation of what we believe about others and, often, about ourselves. For Alberto, it wasn't just a personal affront, but a complete disruption of his sense of security and self-worth. The person he had trusted the most had turned out to be the one who would cause him the most pain, and it was at that moment that he was forced to confront the harsh reality of the situation. This was not just a betrayal of love, it was a betrayal of the very things he had believed would bring him happiness: trust, companionship, and loyalty. But as painful as it was, that moment of betrayal also served as a pivotal call to self-reflection. It wasn't just about the hurt, it was about what he could learn from it. It's easy to get lost in the anger and resentment when someone we love betrays us, but Alberto took a different route. He didn't allow the bitterness to consume him. Instead, he took a step back, even though the pain was unbearable, and started asking himself some deep, uncomfortable questions. Why did this happen? What choices did I make that led me here? And most importantly, how can I heal and grow from this experience? In that silence, as he confronted the enormity of his emotions, he began to see a path forward, a way to not only recover from this pain but to emerge from it stronger, wiser, and more attuned to his own needs. The betrayal didn't just wound his ego, it opened up a space for transformation. It was an invitation for him to rethink his choices, to re-examine his values, and to redefine what he truly wanted from life and relationships. The betrayal was not just a personal failure, but a painful but necessary opportunity for Alberto to reconsider his boundaries, his priorities, and his expectations from others. As he did this, he began to realize that, despite the overwhelming pain, this was also a chance for him to grow and evolve into a person who would no longer settle for less than he deserved. One of the most remarkable things about Alberto's journey was the strength he showed by choosing to rise above the hurt, rather than allowing it to define him. He could have given in to despair. He could have closed himself off emotionally and retreated into bitterness and anger, which would have been entirely justified given the situation. But instead, he took a step that many others in his shoes might have found difficult. He sought emotional support. He recognized that he could not heal alone. He needed the help of those who truly cared for him, who would listen without judgment and offer the wisdom and guidance he needed to move forward. It's easy to pretend that we can handle everything on our own, but Alberto understood that vulnerability is not a weakness. It's a source of strength. By reaching out to friends, family, and even professional counselors, he allowed himself to lean on others, and in doing so, began the long process of healing. Choosing to seek support was an act of self-care that many overlook when they are consumed by pain. But Alberto's decision also set the stage for a powerful transformation. The more he talked about his feelings, the more he understood himself, his needs, and his desires. He began to realize that, though painful, the betrayal had given him the clarity he needed to finally let go of unhealthy relationships and make room for those who would truly honor his worth. He came to understand that self-love wasn't just a buzzword, it was a necessary practice for emotional survival. This wasn't about selfishness, it was about recognizing his own needs and refusing to ignore them for the sake of others. As time passed, Alberto made the bold decision to move on and start over with someone who was more in line with his values, someone who truly understood and respected what he stood for. This decision was a powerful testament to the truth that it's never too late to reassess what matters in life. No matter how old we are, no matter how much time has passed, we always can reassess our priorities and make different choices. Alberto realized that relationships, like everything else in life, require ongoing evaluation. It's easy to settle into comfort and routine, to accept things as they come, but he knew that he couldn't afford to settle for anything less than what he truly deserved. By choosing to let go of a relationship that no longer fulfilled him, Alberto showed incredible courage. He proved to himself that he was worthy of love that was respectful, honest, and deeply aligned with his values. Alberto's story is especially poignant for older men who might feel that it's too late for them to make a fresh start or find happiness again. Society often perpetuates the idea that as we age, we should simply accept our lot, stop seeking change, and begin to settle for whatever is left. But Alberto's journey shatters that myth. He shows us that no matter our age, it's never too late to cultivate self-love and emotional independence. Emotional independence is not about distancing ourselves from others, but about finding peace within ourselves first. By being emotionally independent, we are better equipped to offer our love and energy to others in a way that is healthy and fulfilling. It's about recognizing our worth, setting healthy boundaries, and refusing to allow anyone or anything to diminish our value. Self-love, as Alberto demonstrated, is not a luxury. It's a vital foundation for living a fulfilling and meaningful life, no matter how many years have passed. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Through his painful journey, Alberto rediscovered his inner strength. He reconnected with old friends, people who had always valued him for who he truly was, not for what he could give or provide. Their respect and admiration gave him the confidence to embrace his worth again. As he did this, he found that life, even after the deepest disappointment, still had so much to offer. New opportunities began to open up, not just in relationships, but in every aspect of his life. Alberto's willingness to accept his past, to learn from it, and to move forward with dignity became the key to unlocking the future he had always dreamed of. In the end, Alberto's story is one of immense growth and inspiration. It's a reminder that no matter what we've been through, no matter how many times we've been hurt, there's always room for new beginnings. Life isn't a series of mistakes that we have to live with forever. It's a series of lessons that shape us into who we are meant to become. The pain of betrayal, while excruciating, became a catalyst for transformation. Alberto's journey reminds us that it's never too late to begin again, to reinvent ourselves, and to pursue happiness with renewed vigor. It's never too late to live life on our terms, to seek out relationships that nurture us, and to embrace the possibility of new opportunities. Every experience, no matter how painful, holds valuable lessons that guide us toward the people we are meant to be, the lives we are meant to live, and the love we are meant to receive. As we come to the end of Alberto's story, I want to leave you with something to reflect on. Life has a way of presenting us with painful moments. Moments that challenge us, shake our sense of security, and force us to question everything we thought we knew. But as we've seen with Alberto, these moments don't have to define us. Instead, they can serve as a turning point for self-growth, self-love, and creating the life we truly deserve. It's never too late to start over, to reassess what matters, and to make choices that align with our deepest values. So, what have you learned from Alberto's journey? What resonated with you the most? I'd love to hear from you. Please share in the comments below one thing you've learned from this video and how you plan to bring it into practice in your own life. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who might benefit from it, and subscribe to our channel for more content on personal growth, self-reflection, and resilience. Your support means the world to us, and we're so grateful to have you as part of our community. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments below.